I am extremely mixed on Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City. On the one hand, we've got all these nuggets of flavor, like, nods to the lore and the universe of Resident Evil, and some cool Easter eggs, and just moments for fans of this franchise, both, old and new, to enjoy and really sink their teeth into. But then on the other hand, the script is really bogging this movie down, and it brings a lot of moments of tension and good character development and maybe good story choices to make, for this film and for this story, specifically for Resident Evil, and it brings a lot of it down. And I don't like to sound mean or demeaning towards fellow filmmakers, but the script is just I have nothing good to say about the script, almost nothing good at all. I think the only good things I have to say about this movie have nothing to do with the script or the screenwriter. I think it's everything that I have positive to say about, which we're gonna talk about in just a second, has to do with the direction of this movie and the execution of it for the most part. But yeah, so anyways, in this review, we're gonna start off with a good here because there is some good things to talk about. Then we're gonna talk about the bad, which unfortunately is plentiful. And then at the end, we'll sort of wrap things around with our overall thoughts, and hopefully you'll tell me what you thought of the movie, because that's mostly what I want to hear is what you guys have seen. What have you guys thought from seeing Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City? But let's go ahead and get right into it. So starting with the good, I want to say the opening sequence before we get that superimposed title card of Resident Evil on the street after Claire and the truck driver have just hit that woman and she's just mysteriously walked off, because she's a zombie. I love everything up until that moment. I have really no complaints there. There's great tension. There's great suspense. Good drama. This is how you sort of, so this is how you sort of build, tension and build this edge of your three edge of your seat thriller type of stuff in movies and in horror specifically. Uh, Beautiful execution. The half woman, half zombie, experimented little girl that we see later on in some flashback videos and stuff that Claire and Leon discover. From having her sort of be hidden in the darkness, but not so much in a way where it's like the typical like, oh, we know that there's something there, but not really. But wait, no, no, that's good. That's great. That's good to have in a horror movie, and they executed it to perfection here. There's shots where you see things that are in the dark, lurking in the darkness, and you hear them almost, but you see it, and you're like, you're really not quite sure. And that stuff is fun in this movie. There's a few times where it comes out where we have moments like that again throughout the film, and anytime something like that happens, especially in this opening sequence, two thumbs up for me. And I think the acting too from the little girl and just the overall the tone and the atmosphere that's being set in this opening sequence of the Raccoon City orphanage is just, again, I just keep using the word perfect because I really absolutely loved they nailed this opening sequence. I mean, everything from the Raccoon City, and not Raccoon City, the Umbrella, propaganda posters that are in the wall of the orphanage. They're trying to get these kids from a young age to buy into Umbrella. It's perfect. That's perfect. That's when you know that the filmmaker and the people behind this project, for the most part, understand this world and care about it, and they want to do it justice. And I think that they absolutely did that here in this opening sequence. There's some great scares, great camera movement as well. Um, Particularly, there's this moment where a young Claire is she sees the girl who's been experimented on, and she's playing with some sort of a little briefcase or box or toy, and we see the light in her little cupboard area, and when she says hello, the light just it turns off, and it's like, whoa, that's creepy. It gives you the chills, and the camera movement as we're slowly sort of pushing in on this cupboard, that's perfect horror right there. That's perfect horror filmmaking because you're slowly easing in the audience with Claire, and taking us to a place we don't necessarily want to go, but we have no other choice. It's kind of like when you're playing Resident Evil, right? When you don't want to turn the corner as when you're playing as Claire or Leon, and you don't want to turn the corner, but you have to, even though something's probably there. And in this case, nothing was, because Birkin comes and starts like, hey, what's going on here? And Birkin, that's another plus for this movie as well. I think he is one of the standout characters in this movie. Unfortunately, I can't say that for a lot of the other characters. We'll talk about that later. The only one I also want to hone in on, other than Birkin, is probably Kaya Scardalario as Claire Redfield. I think that she is really sort of the backbone of this movie. She's a badass. She's really cool to watch on screen. I really like this actress. I think she does a really good job for the most part with what she's given, which isn't much. But I think that she handled herself well, and she does have a nice screen presence to her, so she's definitely a plus. But I guess the last good thing I want to talk about here before we move on to the bad stuff is probably the set design. Again, going back to the opening sequence, with the umbrella posters and propaganda everywhere. The set design on this film, I mean, that deserves massive applause. That's when you know that a director and producers are hiring people who are also passionate about Resident Evil and the property that they're being brought on, to work on. Because the set design here, everything from the 18-wheeler to the little diner to the little corner store to the Raccoon City Police Department, especially to the Spencer Mansion. I mean, the underground section of the under the police department, to the garage of the police department. So many iconic locations in Resident Evil 1 and Resident Evil 2 that are brought to life on here and just really stand out on screen when you see them. You can just see the care and love that was given to these set designs. And for the budget that they had, I believe of only 40 million, you can definitely see where it went to, because again, a lot of these things look like, if you put them picture side by side, I'm pretty sure they almost look like you can't spot the difference. So that deserves high praise, and that's probably the biggest strength and highlight, I think, of the movie, is just the locations and the care that's given to them, and it feels like you're being transported into the world of the Resident Evil games. So those things I love. And I guess one more thing that I do love before we get into the bad here is probably the little sequences, the little horror sequences that we do end up getting throughout the movie. For the most part, the action that we get is it's very entertaining and it's easy to watch, and that's what you want when you get these horror sequences in movies. Specifically, I want to highlight Chris when he's in the Spencer Mansion all alone, and he's having to turn these corners and shoot these zombies coming out of nowhere in the dark, and the only thing that's lighting it up is the flashes from his gun, right? That stuff is very spooky. It reminds you of playing Resident Evil yourself, when you're having to turn these corners and these damn Resident Evil zombies just won't die, right? I especially love that moment when he's in there and he shoots one of the zombies in his face. I think it's Dooley, actually. I think it's Dooley, the cop from earlier who was giving Leon a hard time. He shoots him a bunch of times and he's kind of looking at him. And then, of course, in true Resident Evil video game franchise, at the last second, he pops his head back up, and you have to shoot him in the head and give him one more good, double tap, courtesy of Zombieland, right? So that stuff is all good. It's all great, and it really shows you again the care, the passion, the love that director Johannes Roberts and the rest of the team brought when making this movie. It shows that they understand the world. But now, unfortunately, we do have to get to the bad stuff. And the bad starts, again, with the script. It all begins with the script. The screenplay is the blueprint to your movie. And if that's really weak, a great director and great actors can still rise above it. But I think, unfortunately, when you have a really bad script and you tie in the acting choices that were made here, and the director who's attached to it. Again, I think he does a really good job for the most part, but there's moments where, as a director on set, you can still change things around and try and make the most of what you got. And maybe he does. Maybe he did do that. Maybe I just don't know because I wasn't there. But it feels like I just don't like a lot of the direction that we got in this movie. And going back to the casting choices here, the casting director and the producers who signed off on these actors playing these roles, I think it did a huge disservice to the movie and to what could have been, and to the actors as well, because they have no say. They have not no say, but they have no control over who's getting given the parts. And I think a lot of people are unfortunately miscast. Tom Hopper from the Umbrella Academy, he's really good. I feel like he looks the part more of Chris Redfield rather than Robbie Amell, Stephen Amell's little brother, playing Chris. He doesn't sound like Chris. He doesn't particularly feel like Chris. And the same goes with Leon, who stands out the most. Leon is absolutely useless in this movie for the majority of the film. It's an hour 47 minutes long. He's probably useless for like an hour and 25 minutes. And even when he's not useless, he gets one cool moment at the end where he, of course, has the bazooka and he, or the missile launcher, and he just completely destroys, the 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 fully, transformed Birkin, right? The monster Birkin. But which I love that, by the way. I love that they did that, and they had the little eyeballs. We'll get to that. We'll get to that in a second. But again, Leon is just useless, and it's nothing against the actor per se. Again, I think it's just the casting director and the producers and the people who signed off on these casting decisions, because he doesn't. I forget the actor's name. I don't want to harp on him too much. I don't want to sound like I'm beating down on him, but he just doesn't embody Leon Kennedy. And I think not only does he not embody Leon Kennedy and doesn't feel like it, but in the script, Leon doesn't feel like Leon. He's completely useless. And yes, in the Resident Evil games and some people like to sort of try and push around Leon S. Kennedy and trying to discount him and not take him seriously, and or people hate him and stuff. But and that's true in the games, but Leon always rises above that with his actions, right? His actions speak louder than words. But in here, it's like he doesn't fight back in any sort of way. He doesn't know how to he doesn't know that his gun's jammed. He doesn't know what's going on. He's just completely confused, and ultimately the character just feels useless in this movie. I mean, there's no reason to really have his character. You can pluck him out of the movie, and there's no difference whatsoever. So, if anyone gets the short stick out of anybody in this movie from characters, the legacy characters of Resident Evil, it's definitely Leon. And I know, hey, what can you say? Unfortunately, they just did a real disservice to him. Jill Valentine was played by Hannah John Kamen, I believe, from the Ant-Man and the Wasp movie. And she also sticks out as someone who I just don't believe as Jill Valentine. So, a lot of casting decisions here just unfortunately don't work for me. I think the only one, again, that works is Kaya Scodelario as Claire Redfield. But other than that, it really makes it hard to buy into the characters. And another thing that makes it hard to buy, going back again to the script, is moments like the diner scene when people are the other cop Dooley is kind of egging on Leon. And then as Wesker and I believe Chris is there, I can't remember, but as Wesker and Jill are leaving, and she stops and she wants to say something to Leon, and she's like, "Hey, I'm Claire Redfield," and he's like, "Oh, hey, I'm Leon S. Kennedy." It's like, no one talks like that. Do you ever, do you ever speak to someone and say, "Hey, I'm so and so and so"? Do you introduce yourself by your full name? Do people do that in reality? And so this is something that takes us out of reality. At least for me, it took me out of the viewing experience, and I thought, okay, these are just lines that the actors are reading. This is not these characters saying, this is not one character saying this to another character. This is one actor reading their lines, and then the other actor's like, okay, he said his line, he said her line, and this is where my line comes in. So again, the script is what really makes this movie, it makes it a C plus when it could have been a solid B plus, right? Or maybe even an A minus. There's a ton of potential in the Resident Evil franchise, and I think this movie is ultimately the closest we'll ever get to a good Resident Evil movie, at least so far. I think if you hand it over to people, maybe with a little bit of a bigger budget, or maybe you don't even need a big budget, because I didn't mind the CGI for the most part, which we'll talk about just as soon as I make this point. I don't know. I think there needs to be just a little bit more care given to this franchise, and then you can have a really good movie, because the material is there, man. The source material is there to make a great movie. Unfortunately, I think that the script is really weak, and it really just makes it hard overall. When your script is weak, it makes it hard to direct, and then it makes it hard to get with these acting choices that you have. It makes it hard to believe these characters, and when it's already hard to believe in these actors playing these characters, you need a really good, strong script to make you believe in them. But there's really not a lot of moments like that. And I think the story also suffers a lot in this script, because you're combining elements of Resident Evil 1 and Resident Evil 2 together, and you're mashing them together. And when you do that, you have it feels like so many cooks in the kitchen, right? We've got Claire and Leon's story, going up against Chris and Jill's story. And in the end, we're not given enough time with either pair to really care about either one. And so at the end of it, when they're all kind of, forming, reforming and regrouping and getting out of there and working together, and they're saving Birkin's little girl. You don't feel it as much as when you played the games, because you spend all of this time with these characters, and I feel like you should have really split the cast in half. This should have either been Resident Evil 1 or this should have been Resident Evil 2. And unfortunately, they try to do them both at the same time, and they just couldn't execute it. They couldn't land it. And I don't want to put too much on the director, because I feel like that's mostly the fault of the script. So yeah, I guess before we wrap things up here, I'll say the last thing I'll touch up on is I want to say that the campiness that's in the script as well. There's some campiness in the Resident Evil franchise. That can't be denied, but it's different in a video game as opposed to a movie. When you have characters like Dooley, the cop, sort of egging on Leon in the store, or not the store, but the diner. And then you have the sheriff with the way he speaks and acts, and he's just really over the top. Again, people aren't like that in real life. At least for the most part, right? I mean, maybe there. I mean, with the state of the country right now, maybe there is, but that's neither here nor there. But for the most part, that's not how you have people and characters act in your film, and it makes it just feel really campy, and it makes it hard to buy into. And I guess the last point, truly now, is the CGI. I actually like that it was used very sparingly, because of course they didn't have a big budget, so the CGI is it sticks out. It's very noticeable on like the dog and on Birkin at the end transforming, and the lickers. I think the licker probably looked really, really good for how short of screen time it had. Man, I wish we got more lickers, right? I wish the lickers could have done more damage like they do in the damn games, but the CGI, hey, what can you do about that? I don't want to complain too much about it, but other than the fact that it looked noticeably, it needed a lot of work. And that's not their fault entirely, because they don't have the budget to make it look better. But yeah, these are my overall thoughts on Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City. Please let me know what you're thinking in the comment section below, because I'd really be curious to hear what you guys have to say, especially Resident Evil fans. I want to know what Resident Evil fans think of this, and then casuals. Let me know if you're a casual viewer of this movie, or are you like a hardcore fan? Because the people I was watching it with were giving their commentary throughout the whole thing. They were hollering and cheering, and they gave it a standing ovation at the end of the movie, and I was just sitting around like, really? But hey, if you enjoy this movie, you enjoy the movie. So yeah, and if you enjoy content like this and want to stick around for more reviews coming to the future of this channel, and some video essays where I break down movies in depth, like Jeepers Creepers and Rent-A-Pal with Will Wheaton, and Anaconda, the 1998 creature feature, then stick around with the channel, and hope you enjoy the ride. But until next time, guys, this has been Millennium Movies. I'll see you all very soon.